Is this, yes, it's on. Okay. Fast API. Yeah, I loved Flask actually. Um, 10 years ago, I joined a startup, well-funded startup actually, Eclectic IQ, and uh, they had more engineers than product people. So when we started there was nobody really had a clue of what we should be building. So back then, I actually had the time to build a solid foundation for this product that we were going to build. We chose Flask and SQL Alchemy 10 years ago. Django was already old by then. Um, but Flask is a micro framework. So if you build a serious application on top of it, you are going to have to fill a lot of gaps. And at that startup, I had the space and time to build that. And so I was quite content with what we came up with. Back then, I never really considered to open source it. It was not something in my mind or that you could figure out that that was something you could split out. But that was 10 years ago. Now we are in a different landscape. Oh. Yeah, now you can see it, right? So, Django, the blue line, has been going steady actually, despite its age. These are GitHub stars. Right? It's not really the best measure of popularity, but it's some indication. Flask has been going down, sadly. And FastAPI has risen like a meteor, and now it's the most popular web framework in Python. And that's where we are. So first, I would like to see a raise of hands. Like, who has used or is using FastAPI? Right. So that's more than half of the room. Then you probably know the problems that come with FastAPI, or at least you have experienced them, at least subconsciously. Yeah, unless you're building a machine learning or data science app, then you might have gotten away not hitting those problems. But yeah, FastAPI has problems, and we can see that in the landscape of FastAPI adjacent web frameworks. If we look here, it's basically what we see is CRUD, controllers, class. All these projects, they are trying to solve a problem. So clearly, something is up with FastAPI. Let's see how popular these libraries are. Let's see if it resizes. Yes. The green line is FastAPI utils, you may know it, but that is no longer being maintained. The orange line is grid router, also not being maintained anymore. The blue line is FastCRUD. It's a new one, apparently gaining popularity. I didn't know about it when I built Restly because I started on Restly in 2022 when I joined a company called Clearblue Markets, and they were using FastAPI. And I found myself that I learned that FastAPI is also a micro framework, and that leaves the same gaps that you have to fill when you build a web application. Back then, I didn't like utils or CRUD router. They didn't really solve all my problems. So I decided to build my own framework based on what I did for Flask for FastAPI. So yeah, there we are. Yet another framework to the long list. Like half of these, by the way, are basically not maintained anymore. So apparently there's something of a real challenge there, getting to find a good solution. Right. So what's the problem? Well, I'd say FastAPI doesn't provide you any good concepts to reuse endpoints you've defined. It also doesn't really help you with Pydantic classes. Pydantic is not the ideal serialization library, I'd say. It doesn't support you in having different create and update versions. Um, and then there's the challenge of SQL alchemy there, and it just hangs around, and you need to glue it together yourself, basically. Um, and that's what everybody's doing. So overall, there's no holistic approach to building a web application, which I would say Django actually has. Don't get me wrong, FastAPI is beautiful. The dependency system is great. Type annotations for API shape is just a really good idea. And yeah, we all know OpenAPI spec. That's really powerful. It brings front and back end full stack development to another level, I'd say. Right, I jumped right in. This I took from the FastAPI full stack template. This is what you need to do with plain FastAPI if you want to have a CRUD. It's 5 endpoints. You need to declare the response schema everywhere. You need to repeat the session everywhere. You need to repeat the current user in this case. And so this is for item. What now if you want to do a widget CRUD? There's no clear way of reusing these. And sure, maybe 2 CRUDs, that's fine, but what if you have 10? It becomes crazy. The other part with the Pydantic models, so this is SQL model. To be honest, I don't know that much about SQL model, but it tries to solve the SQL alchemy Pydantic relation. But still, you see that you now have 6 classes that you need to deal with just for a CRUD. It tries to limit the amount of repetition of fields, but actually in this particular template, many fields were still being repeated because they wanted validation and so on, and that wouldn't go from the SQL alchemy model to the Pydantic and so on, so it's actually complicated. And then what else? What everybody needs to do is you build the little factories to build your item, because FastAPI doesn't give you that. SQL alchemy doesn't give you that. And in the end, you build your own general utils, like update object. I mean, it's not that much code, but it's slightly tricky, and everybody is doing the same thing. So, Restly. Well, the core idea is that you get class-based views. That's what Django REST framework did, and it's what many of those other frameworks try to do. But I would say actually the reason I'm really proud of this project is that these are actual Python classes that support inheritance, mixin, overriding, everything. I also put in Pydantic schema generation, which can be a bit of a hack. I mean, if you know what you're doing or the CRUD is simple, otherwise you still have to define your create and update schemas. And there are other smaller things, general utilities, save point rollback for tests, React admin, basically things you want for a web application. So here's a sample. This is the minimal CRUD view for Restly. It has the ID base is SQL Alchemy declarative base. This just has the ID primary key built in. Also table name auto-generated. So you only have to do title and description. And you pass it to the item view, which is a subclass of the Restly async REST view. You say what route you want it on, and you pass on the model, and then Restly generates the Pydantic read schema, the create schema, the update schema, updates 5 endpoints for you. and you're done. That's what it gives. So it's absolutely minimal, but I mean, this is nice, but like whenever you're building any application, you find out this is not going to work. So you need more validation. You're going to declare your schema explicitly, and you say, I have these validations on these fields. And now you specifically say, yeah, this is my read schema. And then from this, Restly can still generate the item create and item update. Basically, it filters the read-only fields. There's a marker for read-only. It transfers the Pydantic schema into one that has that is all optional fields with default none. So the partial update works. But Restly is not really about CRUD. It's about the class-based views. You can build any kind of resource with it. You can build your own style of CRUD if you want, but you can have any kind of format. Just supports routes, but on the class-based. And you can declare dependencies on the class level, but you still get them on self. So you don't actually have to pass them out every time. Session is already included, I think, in Vue. So, no, it's on CRUD. But yeah, you declare it once, you inherit from this base view that you made, and now you have this dependency on all your routes. Right, more complicated version. So here I show there's a mix-in, there's a base class, this is the API version 1, and now we have your item view. And those items, they are owned by the current user. They should be owned by the current user. So you can only see those. So there's this override point, build query, that all the endpoints hit. So now all the endpoints in item view will filter on this current user ID. And it gets the nested prefixes from its parent class, the API v1. So the API v1 class really serves as this base for everything that you want for v1. It really saves, yeah, you can put any kind of overrides in there that you like. So, but CRUD is not the point. It's about declaring logic only once. It's about getting a consistent API, because if you keep repeating all your endpoints and your schemas, you're going to make subtle differences that the front end will have to deal with, or the client. But if you declare it only once, it's much easier to keep it consistent, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So the list endpoint, for example, also has pagination, sorting, filtering. Stuff I saw was being implemented on a per need basis. Like, again, we need to filter on this particular field. We'll add it as a URL parameter. But Restly just gives you the full schema that you gave it as pagination or filtering and sorting options. Right, that was it. I'm not sure how much time we still had. 15 minutes left. Okay, well, that went a lot faster than I expected. And maybe I skipped some things in my mind.